just like a song, and brighten my day. Who'd have believed that you were part of the dream? Now it all seems like years away. You know I can't smile without you. I can't smile without you. I can't see. I'm finding it hard to do anything, and I feel sad when you're sad. I feel glad when you're glad. If you only knew what I'm going through, I just can't smile without you.
What is happening, people? Welcome back today to my channel. If you're listening, of course you can as well on a podcast platform. It's Nottingham Forest versus Tottenham this weekend, and here is the opposition preview. Let's bring on the guests that I'll be talking to. Greg, thank you so much for your time from the Talking Reds podcast. How you doing?
I'm really good. Yeah, thanks ever so much for having me on, Harry. Looking forward to talking about this game with you. I live actually about 15 minutes away from Tottenham, so I'm a Forest fan living in a Spurs area. So it's probably a team I know. I wouldn't say I know loads and loads about, but certainly know probably more about this team than most other Premier League teams outside of Forest. So yeah, looking forward to chatting.
Love it. And I believe you're going to that. Yeah, they're going to the game this weekend. Is that right?
I am. Yep, I will be driving up on Sunday morning with my son. So very much looking forward to this game. Yeah, you know, Spurs are, I don't know, they're funny. I do like Spurs, but I also hate Spurs as well. It's a funny kind of relationship I've got with them. But, you know, maybe because I live in the area, I've lived here for like 20 years or so, got a load of Spurs friends. So the hate isn't a real hate. It's just kind of maybe it's a bit more of a, maybe I kind of almost think they should be doing a lot better than they do, and maybe it's almost like a critical friend kind of hate. Do you know what I mean? It's like, you know, so even like I'm not a Spurs fan, but even I'm like looking on sometimes thinking, you know what, you really should be doing a lot better. I mean, obviously last season you got your trophy, didn't you? So that was a good thing for you guys.
Exactly that, Greg. Thank you for your time. Should be a good one. But if you're new to the channel, you're listening on YouTube, please do subscribe. If you're listening via audio, that's your podcast platforms. Drop us a follow, 5-star review. But wherever you are listening, let us know where you're listening from and how you're feeling right now as a Tottenham fan or whatever club you support. You know, in this case, Forest or any other club, Premier League or outside of the Premier League. But Greg, I want to start by, you know, kind of getting your kind of thoughts, you know, in terms of the season so far. What have you made of it? Would it be fair to say that it's underwhelming from a Forest point of view?
Yeah, it's been really tough. Everyone from the outside looking in will know about the managerial changes. And obviously when you and I first ever met, you came onto our pod because we'd just hired Ange Postecoglou and we wanted a Spurs fan's view on that. And you came on and it was a really good episode and you spoke really highly of Ange. And I know that obviously when his departure from Spurs occurred, there were some that were very much in favour of him going and some that were, you know, felt it was unfair. But anyway, he ended up leaving you guys and we took him on after Nuno left. And so, you know, the whole season started for us on the back foot. We weren't expecting to lose Nuno. The pre-season itself wasn't great, but we had high hopes. You know, we're going into the Europa competition this year. First time back in Europe for over 30 or there about 30 years. You guys won that trophy last season. We'd hoped that we could have got into the Champions League, but that just fell away from us at the end of last season. And maybe the Europa was a good place to kind of start our European adventure. So we're all very excited about that. And then we sack Nuno and Ange comes in and it was just a disaster. It just was a disaster. It didn't work. It didn't fit. And we were then finding ourselves without an identity, without really knowing where we were going to end up. So Sean Dyche comes in and, of course, he steadied the ship. He's done what Sean Dyche does. And us Forest fans have been speaking about his connectivity with the club and the city because, obviously, he was there as an apprentice. Ian Wone, Steve Stone, former Forest players coming in with him as his staff. Dyche has lived in the city for a long time. So anyway, he's really kind of helped us stabilise, but we're still in a relegation battle, Harry. We are sitting in 17th position. It's quite funny because one thing I've joked about and talked about quite a bit on Talking Reds is, I would take finishing 17th now and the Europa League trophy in an absolute heartbeat. That's what you guys achieved last season. And obviously Spurs have got bigger ambitions in the Premier League, and we have too as well, don't get me wrong, but I would take that all day long. So if we ended up finishing in the position that we're in, but it meant we won the European trophy, I'd be very, very happy. But that's for the future, perhaps. In the here and now, we've just won last night in Europe away at Utrecht, so we're finding our feet again in that Europa League. So from that point of view, we're just outside the top 8 with a couple of games to play, and I think we can gate crash and qualify automatically. That's a huge positive. We play Spurs on Sunday, and it's a huge match. Our last game out against Everton, very disappointing. But the overall report card for Dyche is pretty positive. We need to get ourselves up the table. I do think that we are better than 3 other teams in this division. But it's been disappointing. There's so much that's gone on. Even the Morgan Gibbs-White thing with the Spurs saga in the summer was a big part of that. So there's been things along the way that have really been a problem for us, and injuries is a huge part of that as well. Players coming back now, so hopefully we'll get a bit more stability going forwards.
Yeah, definitely. You're missing key players, if I'm not mistaken. Aina and Wood. I mean, a couple, aren't there? Are there any more that you're missing that are kind of big names that people would know?
Well, Ola Aina's been out. The news is that he's, at time of recording and doing this pod with you on the Friday night, he has stepped onto the grass playing for the B team. So he's getting minutes in the B team tonight. He's been left out of the Nigeria squad for AFCON, albeit they tried to include him apparently, but Forest have really dug firm. So he's on his way back. Wood, we understand, is on the grass and hopefully back soon. That's an injury that's gone from being out for a couple of games to being out for like 9 or 10 games. Douglas Luiz was back on the pitch last night, having been out, as was Alexander Zinchenko. And for us, it's about having bodies back on the pitch. As much as we've missed their quality, we've been overloading players because we've been quite thin in certain areas. Our fullback areas has been a real problem. So Dylan Backwell, a really good upcoming young player who we have high hopes for, has been out injured as well. He's just coming back. Ryan Yates, who many will know is a bit of an S-house. He's club captain. He picked up a hamstring injury against Everton. So look, there are players coming back. We think Matt Sells will play in goal on Sunday. There's an outside chance that he won't. He didn't play last night. John Victor has been the preferred European goalkeeper in the last few matches anyway, but Matt Sells didn't travel with a tight groin. But we expect him to play. But keep your eye on that one. But yeah, the squad is going to benefit from having Douglas Luiz definitely back in it.
But Greg, a lot of people will listen to you say there, and I think you're right, but saying that the squad is thin, but then we'll look at the money that Forest has spent since Mariak has come to the club. So do you think the money's been spent in the right places if you're thin on the ground after what you've spent and what you've been through?
I think the thinness only comes because of the injuries. I mean, we can only use a 25-man squad in the Premier League like everybody else. We were a little bit caught short with the Europa League squad because of the rules about having homegrown talent and academy graduates in that. So we were down to, I think, a 21-man squad on that. Amari Hutchinson is our record signing in terms of money we've paid for him. He was left out of the Europa League squad, which caused a big kind of eyebrow raise in a lot of fans. He wasn't getting a lot of game time. He's come to the fore recently, getting lots of Premier League minutes. James McAtee from Man City came in on big money. He's really struggled to get game time and he's really struggled to get going. He played last night, got hooked at half time. He wasn't having a bad game. The first 25 minutes, in fact, he was pretty good. But he was hooked for a tactical switch. So when I say thin in numbers, I mean, the fullback area was a problem because Aina got injured after the window closed. We had brought in Alexander Zinchenko. We brought in Nicola Savona from Juventus, an Italian fullback who has played recently, scored against Liverpool and Man United in the home game. So there is a squad there, But as I say, we haven't just had 1 or 2 injuries. We had like 7 or 8 injuries of first choice players out. Hudson-Odoi was out for a while. Gibbs-White was out for a while. Murillo missed 3 or 4 games with the virus, as well as earlier on in the season. In fact, Murillo, I don't think, or hardly played under Ange Postecoglou. He played the first 15 minutes against Arsenal in Ange's first game, and then he played against Midtjylland on the horrific night that we lost, and went off injured in that game as well. So there have been real problems with injury, and that's why we've struggled. And last night we played Zach Abbott, who's a right back. I beg your pardon, he's not a right back. He's a centre back, a young centre back, but he was playing a right back last night. So we have used the academy a little bit in the Europa League. But yeah, it's about getting bodies back. And Sangare is going off with AFCON. We're quite lucky this time that we aren't going to get hit with AFCON players leaving as much. We expect Sangare to play on Sunday. He's found some good form under Sean Dyche, so we expect Anderson and Ibrahim Sangare to play in midfield.
Greg, thank you for that. That's really informative. Thank you. And just to give some context in terms of what you're saying about with Sean Dyche and how you've basically turned the corner. I mean, stats back that up. Sean Dyche has now won 6 of his 11 games in charge at Nottingham Forest. I mean, that's a really impressive turnaround. But Greg, before we move on to the game itself, could you give me one player that you've been most impressed with for Forest this season, and one you've been maybe a little bit disappointed in?
The obvious name is Elliot Anderson in terms of player that we've been impressed with. I think everyone knows about Elliot Anderson now because Thomas Tuchel has included him as a starter in, I think, the last 4 or 5 England games. And he is an exceptional talent. I would say he is the best player we've had at the club for a long, long time. He is our most important player. He is gifted. He is seriously gifted. We will be lucky to hold on to him beyond the summer. I expect big teams to come in with big money for him. And I'm not really overstating it. He is an exceptionally talented player. He can play anywhere. He's playing 6 in the 6 role for England. He can play there for us. We use him perhaps a bit more of an 8. He can play in the 10 role. He is so good on the ball. Maybe his finishing is the area he needs to improve on. But yeah, we knew this would be a big season for him. Elliot Anderson, an absolute fantastic player. Quick honourable mention for Nico Williams, also brilliant. Can play left back or right back. In terms of disappointment, I think at the moment everyone's feeling a little bit disappointed with the Swiss international Dan Ndoye. He came in from Bologna in the summer and we really wanted him and we went after him hard. I think it was Napoli that were also in for him, but I think he wanted to move to the Premier League. Got off to a good start in the opening fixture against Brentford with a lovely header, and then against Palace away, a lovely assist for the goal. But since then, he's just been a player that seems to show up in odd moments, and those moments have become a little bit few and far between in recent games. He feels like and looks like he's lost his way a little bit. He's been playing right wing and then sometimes on the left wing. Our winger choices have been limited because of those injuries. So, maybe there would have been opportunities had they not been injured for him to come out of the team and take a breather. So he's had to kind of take on a lot of workload, in fairness to him. But yeah, so far, he'd be the one that I would say has been the most disappointing from a Forest point of view. But there's still time.
Greg, thank you for that. Appreciate it. On the game there, I mean, you touched on it there, but I wanted you to go in a little bit more detail about Spurs and how do you view them as a club, but also the supporters? I mean, you kind of mentioned there almost like a love-hate kind of relationship. It's, you spoke about it being both ways.
Yeah, like I said, I've got a lot of Spurs friends, and everyone I know. I mean, it's all good-natured stuff. It really, really is good-natured. Growing up, I mean, I'm a bit older than you, Harry. So Forest were a top first division team. So we're talking before the Premier League, and Spurs and Forest played each other week in, week out, and they were almost like clubs on an even level, very much so. And then when we got relegated in the 90s, the whole landscape of football changed and the money really took over, became such a driving force. And we missed out on that for 23 years out the top flight. And all the other clubs that we were probably on a par with just took off, and Spurs were definitely one of those. The stadium is amazing. I went to White Hart Lane a couple of times before it was demolished, and that was an old stadium with character. But the new stadium is so impressive. But it's got to be But you guys, it's got to be, and I'm sure you guys want it to be more than just about the stadium and the facilities and these world-class surroundings that your players can enjoy, because, you know, you want football's about winning, isn't it? And you experienced that last year as Spurs fans. It was horrific for you guys in the Premier League, but by hook or by crook, you know, whether it was a poor final or a poor competition or whatever, the history books show that Spurs won the Europa League. And that's a top tier trophy. That's a very, very good trophy to win. And you kind of got that monkey off your back, haven't you? So, you know, from the outside looking in, it was Man United, Spurs. I was like, I'm not quite sure how I feel about any of these teams winning. But, you know, listen, fair play to you. You got to respect that. And we're a team and we're a club that we've had our own European success many, many years ago. And for us to be back playing in Europe has been a huge thing for us this season. And we just want a little bit of that. So looking as the outside looking in, and then you bring Thomas Frank in as your manager, you know, he's an individual that I respect and think he is a good manager. But, you know, he's got his own, we've got our own history with him when he was manager of Brentford. You know, we've rubbed him up, I think, and he's rubbed us up a little bit along the way. So it'd be interesting. And he makes me laugh because he went so hard after Brennan Johnson when Brennan was with us. He wanted him at Brentford. He almost begged him to join Brentford. But Brennan said no, and he wanted to join Spurs, and he joined Spurs. But of course, now Thomas Frank is a Spurs manager. He doesn't play him, you know. So there's talk that Brennan could be on the way, perhaps. I think I read earlier that Palace might be looking at Brennan Johnson. We would definitely, I personally would love Brennan Johnson back at Forest. But in terms of you guys at the club, look, I think, to be honest with you, this is more... You've turned a bit of a corner. It's a transition year, I think. This year's got to be seen as a transition year. You want to finish in European places and do well in the Champions League. Now you've changed chairman. Wonder what the tipping point is for the people that are making the decisions at the club.
Greg, what have you made of Spurs this season under Thomas Frank?
Well, they started well. You started really well. And I was feeling a little bit, oh God, Spurs, because we were used to them last year, you and Man United. It was quite nice, you know, bigger clubs, so-called bigger clubs, struggling in the Premier League. You know, we'd experienced that. So, you know, when you're coming up after being out of it for a while, even though in my head Forest are a huge club, the perception is that to a lot of fans, Forest are a championship team, really. So when we were back in the Premier League and then you see the likes of Spurs and Man U last year kind of struggling a little bit, you think, oh, okay, maybe they can experience and know what that feels like for a while. But you guys started this season really well under Thomas Frank. The honeymoon was certainly in full swing. I think lately you've kind of just seen that inconsistency. And I think I was wondering about how the hierarchy at Spurs, now that Daniel Levy's gone, how they view Thomas Frank and how much time they would give him. I'm not suggesting he should be sacked, but I know one or two of my Spurs friends were like, "Oh, God, I'm not quite sure about this guy," because you started losing a few games. Your home form hasn't been great, if I'm not mistaken. What would Levy have done? I mean, Nuno didn't last very long when he was your manager because your position wasn't favourable and the style of play wasn't favourable. And fans didn't want him, and you know we had Ange for 8 games, so managers can come and go very quickly. So I think a lot of the focus is really on the manager, and you know I suppose I should ask you what do you guys think? What is a good season this year for you? Is it a transition? The league position reflects it's more of a transition. I think you're in 11th now. You've dropped down a little bit. You got some good players, but sometimes I think you're flattered to deceive a little bit. I mean, Xavi Simons, great player. He's just getting going for you now, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. He has just, 2 man match performances, goal and assist against Brentford last Premier League game. You're right, he's taken off. But I don't want to speak for the whole kind of fan base here. But for me, I think you're right, transitional season is the right way to put it. I think it's all about patience, it's about time. And I think it'll be our lowest finish under Frank, put it that way. It's only going to go up from there, which I see as a positive thing. Some people look at it and go, oh, really? I think that's what should be expected. You go up and up and up, beyond where you start. So for me, I think realistically, kind of any form of European football in terms of qualifying via the league phase kind of league places is the right and realistic approach. I think it's about juggling all three fronts that we're in. That's what the club was saying repeatedly at the start of the season. I think Frank's the guy to do that. So I think from a fan's point of view, if we can somehow get to the quarterfinal of the Champions League, somehow finish inside the top 7 or 8, and not get knocked out in the first couple of rounds of the FA Cup, as me as a fan, I'm happy with that. Some Spurs fans will differ, will go, yeah, but we won a trophy last year. But the club made it clear, whether you agree with it or not, it's about juggling all of them. It's trying to juggle 3 balls is the way I see it. And, you don't want to be dropping one, because whereas last year we dropped every single one, but went all the way with that one. That's the thing. And that's the club happy with that and grateful. But what's interesting though, quickly, Greg, is the club say that they're happy, well, really happy. They want more nights in Bilbao, is what they often say, and what you often hear comes out from the hierarchy of the club. They want more nights in Bilbao, but they sacked Ange. And, they brought Frank in, and they've said themselves, Vinay or through the owners, that we want to compete on all 4 fronts. Do you think as an outsider, that's like saying, look, no, we don't want really what happened in Bilbao. We want to juggle all these competitions, maybe in the long term, but you can't be winning the Premier League and Champions League. We're not in Arsenal's position at the moment.
It's difficult. I mean, what do I think you guys want? What would I want as a football fan? I mean, I think I said to you at the start, I would take 17th in the Premier League. I don't want to get relegated because I think we need to be in the top flight. But if we can capture a moment in time where we can have our European final in the Europa League and win it, I'd bite your hand off for that. I absolutely would. But in a real world, or in an ideal world, that's what I'm trying to say. In an ideal world, I'd want for us to go deep into the European competition and into a final. I'd want for it, like last year, we went to the semi-final of the FA Cup. We were in the top 3 for so long in the Premier League. So it was almost like we were having the season of our lives. So it was great to kind of enjoy the ride of the Premier League and great to enjoy a deep cup run. It was fantastic. But those seasons don't come around very often. If I put myself into a Spurs fan's view, I mean, it's very difficult because for so long, the outsiders look at Spurs and think, you guys are deluded. It's like, you guys hadn't won a trophy for so long, and yet you were, I mean, I'm just kind of speaking off the cuff here. Maybe we kind of thought, you guys think you're better than you are. You think you deserve more than you do. And actually, you've got this big, shiny stadium, but beyond the big, shiny stadium, you're just the same as Fulham. You're no different from Fulham, really. You haven't won anything for God knows how long. Yes, you have had really good players in, but for whatever reason, the magic hasn't happened. I mean, you got to a Champions League final with Pochettino, and that could have been your moment, and that unravelled. I think Daniel Levy exiting the club is a huge game-changing moment for Spurs. And as I said before, I just wonder how the hierarchy now, what is the trigger point for them when if it goes wrong? What's the trigger point for them? Because, I mean, look at Man United and Ruben Amorim. So many people think he would have been sacked by now. But the new ownership, or the new decision makers, I should say, Ratcliffe, those decision makers are saying, no, we need to give this guy time. And it's really bucking the trend of how it has been in world football for a long time. And you might say that slowly but surely, man, look at them now. I think, they top 4, top 5 or something like that, maybe top 6 without looking. They're having a better season without being dazzling. But maybe there's something in that about giving the manager time to really lay down his principles. If you can see it starting to take root. And I was calling for that when Ange was in place, and I was trying to give him time. But it just was not working in the end. It wasn't working. I don't think it was ever going to work. So when it comes to Thomas Frank and when it comes to Spurs, I wonder at what point do the Spurs fans really rustle and say, you know what, this isn't working, or if they would want to give this guy time. For you guys, I wonder, does he survive and keep his job if you don't get into Europe, if you exit in round 5 of the FA Cup, and if you get knocked out in the next phase of the Champions League? I mean, you might be thinking, well, look, this guy isn't really what we need. Don't know. I guess only you guys can answer that.
Yeah, time will tell. That's the thing. And right now, hopefully, Frank gets that time. But last brief question before we do get on to Sunday's game, Greg, if you don't mind. I want to get your favourite memory. Forest and Tottenham, it can be one of recent years, one in the past. What would you pick as your highlight? I assume you choose a good memory rather than bad.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, last year we did the double over you guys, which was fantastic from our point of view. We got I think it was 1-0 win at the City ground, and then 2-1 down at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So recent memories are good, but I think I'd go back to when I was probably just a little bit older than you. Can't quite remember the year. FA Cup match at White Hart Lane, and it went to penalties. And we won the penalty shootout. And Forest have actually been quite good at penalty shootouts over the years. But one of my favourite memories is Mark Crossley was our goalkeeper and a very good penalty saver. And he saved, I think, 2 or 3 in that shootout. And at the end of the shootout, he'd saved the last penalty, and everyone had erupted. And he sprinted from the goal where he was saving the penalties to all the way down the other end where the Forest fans were. And the ground was so dry that when he tried to do a Jurgen Klinsmann style sort of Superman to flop and slide towards them, he just stuck. He didn't move. The ground was so dry. And it was just quite a funny moment. But yeah, we won that penalty shootout. I think we're talking mid-90s. We're talking like 96, 97, I think, that kind of time. But yeah, I always remember that. But you know, we've had some disappointing games against you guys as well. The FA Cup final 1991. I was 16. I was your age, and we lost. Des Walker scored the own goal, and I cried.
There you go. Thank you, Greg, for bringing up some memories there. On to the game then. How do you feel about Sunday as a Forest fan? Are you confident? Are you nervous?
It's a game we have to win. We're 17th, and Leeds are above us on goal difference. It's tight with West Ham, I think, just 2 points behind us. We need to try and get up the table. Obviously, we've just played in Europe, and so coming off the back of a European night away in the Netherlands, so then having to play at home on the Sunday. The last time we did that, was a couple of weeks ago when we played a home game, won against Malmo, and then played Brighton on the Sunday and lost the game. We didn't get going. And in fact, our last 3 games have been disappointing in the Premier League. We did beat Wolves, but it wasn't a great performance. And the Everton game, we were terrible. So we're going into this one on Sunday off the back of, again, that European night. And Spurs fans know all about Thursday, Sunday football. But you guys, you know, you've had your game on Tuesday. Slavia Prague, I think you won 3-0. Yeah. So you've had a couple of days extra rest. So yeah, I'm a bit worried about that. As I said, we have got players coming back, feeling optimistic that that will make a difference. It kind of feels like one of those games where Spurs might control the ball. I mean, we've been very happy to surrender possession, certainly last year under Nuno, and Deitch is a little bit more like that. Maybe kind of tries to win the ball back a bit higher up the pitch than what Nuno got the team doing. You know, Forest are more than capable of staying in the game and punishing mistakes. So if we can ride an early spell, like we did when we were away at Liverpool, you know, we really were up against it, and we managed to keep them out, rode our luck, and then went on to win the game 3-0. It's going to be tight. It's going to be about those fine margins, that moments in games that can really kind of dictate the way it's going to turn out. And I think discipline is going to be really important as well. Spurs have got some very good players that can hurt us. We know about Brendan Johnson, obviously. We know about Jed Spence if he plays. I think Udogie's out, isn't he? So I expect Jed Spence maybe will come in. So, yeah, it's a game we have to win. If I'm honest with you, I would take a point now because it is Spurs, and I have got respect for them. But at the same time, on our day, now that we have got a bit more stability back in the club with Sean Deitch, and as you said, I think it's 6 games out of 11 or 10 or 11 that he's won. Okay. Yeah, I think we can win it. But, you know, it's not going to be easy.
You spoke about the players that you fear from Spurs, but to flip the question, who should we as Spurs fans, and, you know, Thomas Frank ultimately, if he was listening for whatever reason, if you are, you know, thank you, Thomas, but, you know, I don't imagine you are, but who can really hurt Tottenham from Forest's point of view?
Morgan Gibbs-White is a very creative player. You guys tried to sign him in the summer. You know about Gibbs-White. His form has been very sporadic and up and down. He came on last night in the European game, and his creativity helped carve out the winner. So he's got really good skill. He scored some really important goals for us in the Premier League. Even though his form's been a bit up and down, he went on a 3-game run of scoring. So Morgan Gibbs-White needs to perform, and I think it's this. I hope it's the kind of game that he'll really get up for. It may well be that because of what happened in the summer, with Marinakis getting involved and with he's going to leave, he's going to go to Spurs, he's going to have a medical, he's not. It may well be that the Spurs travelling supporters come and give him some stick, and if they give him some stick, that's going to be good for us because he likes that. When the Wolves fans come and give him stick, because obviously he's an ex-Wolves player, that riles him up and he performs. So I'm kind of hoping you guys give him some stick because I think that will shake him up a little bit. So Morgan Gibbs-White, I've already mentioned Elliot Anderson, but the man of the moment for us is Igor Jesus. He scored last night, great goal. He scored what we thought was a fantastic goal against Liverpool that was ruled out for an unfair handball. He scored the winner against Wolves and had another one ruled out because someone else was offside. He's starting to get the goal scoring habit that we really hoped he would. He's our top scorer in all competitions. Not a great deal of goals, but I think it's 6 goals now he's got, or 7 goals in all competitions. Igor Jesus, we expect him to start in the absence of Chris Wood. He's played for Brazil recently, so keep your eye out for him.
Okay, good stuff. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So, what would your team be, Greg, if you were Sean Dyche in this game? What would be your 11? Okay,
right. So, many will say the team probably picks itself at the moment. Matt Sells has to play in goal for me. He's the clear starter. John Victor, the backup, looks a little bit shaky. So, Matt Sells in goal. Now, the fullback area has been a concern. Nico Williams has become our left back, and he is going to be really important and will have to play really well to keep Kudus quiet. I expect Kudus to play down that right flank. His heat map for Spurs, if you look it up, is all about on the right flank. It's red hot. So we expect a battle there. And Nico is an exceptionally good player. So Nico Williams left back. That Italian lad that I mentioned, Nicola Savona, we expect him to play at right back. Murillo's back, having been missing for a few games with a virus. Murillo and Milenkovic, superb defensive partnership and really important to us as a team. In the midfield, I expect us to go 4-2-3-1. If it was me, I would be picking Elliot Anderson, of course. Sangari, who I mentioned, has been playing well lately, but I would start with Douglas Luiz. He was played the first 45 minutes last night. I would play Douglas Luiz from the start against Spurs as well. Technically on the ball, he's superb. Anderson sitting in a little bit can allow Douglas Luiz to venture forward a bit more as well, and vice versa. In the 10, it's got to be Morgan Gibbs-White. On the right, Amari Hutchinson, who's been our assist king lately. He's really come to the fore. So Amari Hutchinson starts a little bit quieter against Everton, but they all were. On the left, Callum Hudson-Odoi, a player that I'm sure all Spurs fans know about, being a Londoner and a Chelsea graduate. Really coming back into a little bit of form as well. Looked really good last night. Looked sharp. And then the aforementioned Igor Jesus up front. So that would be my team.
Greg, thank you. Lastly, on the game, can I get your score prediction and who you think's going to score?
Well, I said 3-2 when we did the pod earlier to Forest. So I'm going to stick with 3-2 to Forest because 3-2 is a scoreline that hasn't been very favourable for us since we've been back in the Premier League. I think in our first season and second season combined, I think we lost something like 7 or 8 games, 3-2, having been 2-0 up, I think, in 1 or 2 of them as well. So I said 3-2 and Igor Jesus for a brace. And one of my podcast contributors mentioned Nicola Savona. He thought he'd grab another important goal. So I'm going to subscribe to that because Savona got the goal against Man United and he also got a goal against Liverpool. So yeah, we do look at Spurs as a big team coming to our backyard. So Savona and a brace for Igor Jesus.
Greg, thank you. I'm going to have to back my side to get a draw. I want us to win. I think Forest under Sean Dyche are a tough team to beat. I mean, I just don't see you leaking, a couple of goals. I mean, I know you did against Everton, don't get me wrong, but I think with Murillo being back, which you mentioned, especially Sells in goal, you could be okay defensively. So I'm going to go 1-1 and play it a little bit safe. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it, when you say, would you take a point because you don't know about the context? I'd like to sit here now and go, probably I wouldn't. But at the same time, Forest are a good side, like I said, on the Sean Dyche. And if we go behind and fight back, all of a sudden it's a really good point on the road again and undefeated. So it's really tough. It's the context, isn't it, that would be lovely to know.
Forest are happy without the ball, Harry. I mean, do you think Spurs have enough cutting edge to break down a compact side like Forest?
No, generally. But Xavi Simons' form recently gives me some hope that I could be wrong, if that makes sense. We just don't have a player like him that glides with the ball. Reminds me a bit of James Maddison, but of course he's out. But I think, like Maddison being out, I think he was expected, of course, to play this season. He only got injured in pre-season. I just see Maddison as what Frank had it with Nico Damsgaard at Brentford, that creative player. And I think Frank's looked at it and gone, oh God, what do we do? We're going to have to focus on the defence. Look how bad it was last year. Look how many goals we conceded. And then fans looking at it and go 0.00 XG against Arsenal and Chelsea, and they're having kittens. And I get some of it. So, to answer your question, I don't think we have enough to break a team down. That's the problem. Sims will do his best, but at the same time, it's a physical game. Sean Dyche's teams are always physical. Forest are physical anyway. Some strong defenders in them. Marilla, for example, you mentioned. Anderson, Yates, if he was fit, of course, which he isn't, then, that's the type of aggression that represents this Forest team. And I don't know whether Spurs will be up for that, and it may be suited to someone like a Paladini or a Bentancur, that kind of physical battle. But Xavi Simons has toughened up. He's been in the gym, strengthened. So that does give me some hope. I don't have too much confidence we can break you down, but when you have Xavi Simons and Kudus, I think it's a possibility.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I've said it. You've got some good players. We've got to be really guarded. I hope that we can get back to being that solid defensive unit that you've just touched on, because we're a bit leaky, a few silly mistakes creeping in. I want us to get back to a more disciplined approach.
Lovely stuff. Thank you. And lastly, end of season predictions then. Starting with your club, Forest. Where will you finish, honestly, hand on heart, in the Premier League and then the Europa League?
Oh, well, I've already said that I'd take 17th. I don't know, really. I think that it's really to do with those players gelling again and coming back from injury. I think, I'll give you an at best position. I think at best, Forest are going to finish probably 13th or 12th or 13th at very best. I don't see us getting beyond that.
Okay.
If you look at kind of how we've started and how teams in the last 10 years of Premier Leagues, if you look at teams that have had similar starts and similar points after this point, they rarely get into the top half of the table, if ever. So I think that we won't buck that trend. And I think that it's more likely we finish probably 15th or 16th.
I appreciate the honesty. I really do appreciate that. A lot of people go, but we can still get in the top half.
No, you got to look at the players and you got to look at what we've had to go through. You got to look at the big context of it all. It would be great that we can go on a run. Anyone can go on a run. Look at Villa. They started really badly. They've won sort of 7 or 8 games in a row. If we can do that, I mean, last year, it was around this period that we bucked our trend and we went on a 23-game kind of like period where we won 15 games, something like that, which is very impressive. Now, if we could do that again, then obviously what I've just said goes out the window, but I don't see that happening. It's going to be very scrappy. Sean Dyche isn't really a manager that kind of ekes out loads and loads of wins in a row, or if he does, you might then go on a little bit of a period of like losing a few games in a row. He's done well with his games coming in so far. As I say, some of them have been European fixtures against teams that you really should be beating. We've lost 3 in the Premier League. I was at Bournemouth and we were poor. And so we need to be... I want him to be a little bit more... I don't want to say cleverer because that sounds really disrespectful. I want him to be a little bit more thoughtful about his team selection after a European game. I think, he's rotated... But I think, we've had such a funny season that for us to survive in the Premier League, I think a lot of Forest fans would say, let's just write this season off and go again. So that's why I say I would take 17th. And as for the Europa, we're going to win it. There you go. We're going to win it.
Love it.
We're going to have our Spurs season. We're going to be the Spurs of last season. We're going to finish 17th and we're going to win the Europa League.
That's it. And you would take that. That's what you said, wouldn't you? Yeah, take that.
100%. We wouldn't. Why wouldn't you take that? I mean, from our point of view, it's a European trophy, a huge European trophy, and you play Champions League football next season.
Yeah, and you go, you're 17th now, right?
We're 17th at the moment, yeah. So,
And a trophy, it's all right, isn't it?
Happy days.
Happy days indeed.
It's not what I want, but it's what I would take.
No,
what I want is to win the Premier League and win the FA Cup and win everything.
Exactly.
But realistically,
also argue there's no point in being in competitions if you have no aim to win it. People just go, but what? It's absolutely incredible they stayed up. But I'm like, with anyone, it's like, great achievement, but the bigger goal, let's not pretend it's absolutely pitch perfect, because every team, even Wolves at the start of the year, would have gone, this is the aim, but it's just not realistic. But Greg, where do you think Tottenham will finish in the Premier League and Champions League to wrap up?
I really couldn't say. I'll be honest with you. I think you'll finish outside of the European places. I just think for me, I think a team needs to have the main ingredient is consistency. If you have consistency in your team and in your performances, then you go far. And I think Spurs at the moment are just a little bit too inconsistent. I think you'll finish probably top half. It wouldn't surprise me if you finish top 10, 9th, 10th. Who knows in the FA Cup? I think the Champions League, you're doing well at the moment. You're going to qualify, I think, into the next round. I think as soon as you come up against, a seriously good customer, a Bayern Munich, they're like a PSG again. I mean, that was a funny game, wasn't it? I mean, it was like bloody table tennis, that was. But, I think as soon as you come up against that kind of team, I think you'll come undone. But, fair play. You've been in the Champions League. It's where we want to be. So you enter it, you go in for it. You want to be in it again next year, though. That's the thing. So it's about, as you mentioned, juggling all the balls. And I think for Spurs, going deep in this year's Champions League is fine. But if it was me, I'd rather get knocked out of the Champions League now, but finish top 4 so we can go again next year. Because then you're going again. You've added another layer on top. So as long as you're qualifying for the year after, you can get better next year. It's not a 5-minute job to go deep and win the Champions League. I think you have to have multiple qualifications of it year in, year out before you go deep. I think Spurs were qualifying, weren't they, for the Champions League quite regularly. When they got to the final, they had that experience of going into it with Kane and Sonny. You guys kind of like finishing top 4 all of a sudden for like 3 or 4 years in a row or something like that. And so therefore you kind of become accustomed to playing that tournament. I think I personally would bow out of it now if it meant we got into it next year.
Very, very sensible way of looking at it like that, Greg. Thank you, and really appreciate you talking to me today and giving up your time. Where can people follow you and talk to people as well about your podcast across social media?
Yeah, so come check us out, Talking Reds. You can find us on X. We've got a YouTube channel. We're on all podcasts, Spotify and Apple, the usual places. At Talking Reds Pod is the Twitter handle. I'm at Greg_Oram, so you can come and find me and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about by all means. But yeah, come and get involved and have a listen along. We had a load of, I'll quickly say before we went, we had a load of Aussies jump into our pod. Oh, yeah. All the Ange Postecoglou disciples. Oh, you're a much nicer podcast than the Spurs lot, because obviously you guys would have had them probably last year. So Ange had his own disciples from Australia that follow him around. So it was very interesting when we were giving Ange a bit of grief. They didn't like it, but he's gone now. There we go.
He's gone. It's fair to say it didn't work out. I was absolutely wrong on that. I stand by what I said in terms of Andrew, what he achieved at Tottenham, but it didn't work out at all, did it? And Nottingham Forest. For me, just briefly, I think it's a complete contrast in styles. I remember saying to you that my only concern with it working is the contrast in styles. And what I will stand by is that it did need pre-season, transfer window. It's not something that can be done overnight. Nuno is a defensive coach. You'll know that. Look at your pre-season games. How many did you draw 0-0, concede 0 goals? I mean, I've never seen pre-season like that. I mean, you're right. It wasn't perfect, but defensively, where you stood. And just the complete opposite to that, ripping out, going, you're probably going to concede instead of 0 goals a game, 4 or 5, but you also ideally be scoring that many. It's just for Forest, it was too much to hack. And Ange at Tottenham, he had that whole summer transfer window, and I can't tell you how many players left the club. I mean, a lot come in. I think 6 to 7 come in, but double that, if not more, left the club. So that's how big of a project it was. He's brought in early and it took time, so it didn't work out. Any regrets for you, Ange Postecoglou's time at Tottenham? Is the regret appointing him, giving him longer? Is it just wrong manager, wrong time?
I think that's, I wish he'd never walked through the door, because it was the wrong appointment. Everyone knew it was the wrong appointment at the time. I wanted to give him a go. As soon as he was appointed, I thought there was no point harping on about it, but I didn't want him, and it just felt like it was never going to work, and I wished they'd never hired him because he was the wrong manager. it took hiring Ange and it to go so badly for us to want Deitch. If they turned to Sean Deitch after Nuno, I think the fans would have been like, not having this. So it kind of woke us up. It was very sobering. The Ange experience was very, very sobering. But when they decided to sack Nuno, that was a tough one to take because he'd carried us so far and we had a great relationship with him. But when you bring in Ange Postecoglou, you know, everyone wants it to work. No one wants us to lose. We all wanted it to work out. We loved the first half against Real Betis in the Europa League. The first half was electrifying. It was like, my God. It was like some of the best football we've seen for years. But then there was nothing to kind of back it up. And the players didn't look happy. And I regret him coming to the club because I think that's why I'm so pragmatic about my predictions now, because I know what it did to the club and I know what it can do over a period of time. You know, it takes a while to come back from that. And we're in a good place again. Deitch has done a fantastic job. But realistically now, it's about consolidation this season. As I said, staying in the Premier League, don't get relegated. And if we can chuck in a nice European run, then great. But let me say one more thing before we go. If I, for a second, thought that the European run was hindering the Premier League, I would be all in favour of binning it off. You've got to stay in the Premier League. I'd say play the academy players and get out of Europe and focus on the league, because you trust me, you do not want to get relegated again, because you can get stuck down there for another 23 years.
That's the problem with Europe. You can come back, can't you, the following season? Not easily. Nothing's easy, but easier, fair to say. But Greg, thank you so much for your time. Make sure to check Greg out on his podcast across all socials. You know I am by now, Harry Scarfe. Your host, as always, follow me at Harry Scarfe22 across all socials. As I always saying, thank you so much for your continued support. It means a lot. We value all of you here. But if you're listening via podcast platforms, you know, the main ones, Greg listed his podcast there, exactly the same here. Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, you name it, all of the major ones. I mean, I was on, apparently the podcast on a lot more than I thought so, but those are the main ones that I will cover. But thank you so much and enjoy the game. And a massive come on, you Spurs.
You came along just like a song.